This is Noah Gray, tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs, and you are listening to the Best Bell Fantasy Football Podcast.
Welcome in to the Best Bell Fantasy Football Podcast. This is episode 31, and tonight I have with me Kevin Scott. He's a high-stakes grinder, been doing it for 20 years, and he has a podcast, Grinding the Data. Joining me tonight, we're going to discuss quarterback rankings. Kevin, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So what caught my attention, and I wanted to bring you onto the podcast, you brought up a pretty spicy take about your quarterback one overall. We're jumping right on into it. You've done your projections, though. We were talking off air. You've done your projections. Is he still your quarterback one, the quarterback we'll talk about first?
Yes. Yeah. And, it's always hard because I am a big Chiefs fan. And so I have the element of homerism to fight against. But my full projections are done, all the teams, and I have him slightly ahead at number one. So he is still my top-ranked quarterback.
We've buried the lead. It's Patrick Mahomes. So let's talk about Patrick Mahomes. He loses Tyreek Hill, and he loses like the satellite piece to Marcus Robinson to the Las Vegas Raiders. But the Chiefs bring in Sky Moore. They bring in Marcus Valdes-Scantling. They bring in Juju Smith-Schuster. Is it that he has more weapons now? And does this affect Travis Kelce? Is there more upside to Patrick Mahomes based on what you've put into your projections?
So I would say, projections, the way that I do them, at least, and I think most people, you're looking from a full team perspective, and you start with kind of like, what do we expect the team to do? How often do we expect them to, how many plays we expect them to run? And usually the more successful offenses are going to be more like 1,100 plus, the less successful 950 to 1,000, somewhere in there. We expect them to be a super successful offense. And then we ask like how many, percentage of their plays do we think are going to be passes? The Chiefs are consistently, one of the highest pass rate over expected of all the teams. Andy Reid loves to pass. So really it starts with that. Like I expect the Chiefs to pass the ball a ton. Like in my projections, I have Mahomes throwing it 660 times. There's only two quarterbacks I have throwing it more, and that's Justin Herbert and Tom Brady. So just in that top echelon of how many passes I think are going to be thrown, I think that's a huge part of it. Obviously, Mahomes is great. As far as who he's throwing it to, at some point, statistically, you just look at if a quarterback we think is going to be throwing this kind of percentage of completions, and usually Mahomes is in the 66 to 67%, which is, pretty standard for the top quarterbacks. They can sometimes get up towards 70. But if he's going to throw it that much, throw that percentage, he's going to throw that many completions. Then you look at his players, how many, yards per reception are they getting and so forth. So it just came out with the numbers. As I go through them, I think, well, he's likely to throw for this many yards. He's likely to throw this percentage of his passes are going to go for touchdowns. At some point, it doesn't matter as much who's catching them. I do think that, Tyreek is an amazing player and he will miss his big plays. Do I think he can replace that? I mean, probably to some degree with MVS and Sky Moore. Those guys are both stinking fast. A lot of it comes down to how accurate you are, right? Can you throw a good deep ball to the guy that's streaking wide open down the field? And he's, master at picking out who's open. So, yeah, I'm just not too worried about the loss of Tyreek as far as statistics go.
Fair enough. I think that, they surrounded Mahomes with a lot of talented wide receivers this offseason. I wonder about their ceilings, but we know it's going to be probably a Travis Kelce type of season. Looking at how Mahomes did in 2021, like through the first 4 weeks, he was a top 7 quarterback each of those weeks and had 2 top 2 finishes. But teams started to figure him out. The too high safety, defensive positioning and limiting the deep balls. You wonder if they brought in the likes of Sky Moore and Juju Smith-Schuster to kind of open up underneath or force teams to respect not just Travis Kelce, but also other routes and of the wide receivers that they're running, so that, you know, they're not just capping the deep passes there. So I wonder if the average depth of the target's going to increase this year.
Yeah, I think to some degree, no matter who the position players are, no matter what receivers were on the team, the Chiefs definitely, and you could see it through the course of last season, they definitely realized something's not working here. You know, these too high shells are stopping us from doing what we want to do. And some of it was over-reliance on Tyreek. He was their only guy. And they have Mecole Hardman, who's almost as fast, but he's not good, right? So they had to depend on
Thank you. Someone had to say it here.
Yeah,
Mecole Hardman, not good at football,
he's
but
just not
it's
good.
okay.
And I don't even blame the guy. He wasn't even a receiver until like halfway through college, right? He's just not a good route runner. He's not whatever. He's just not good. So yeah, they had to rely on Tyreek. So part of it was like, hey, we got to have other guys that we are sending deep that Mahomes trusts, right? And we have to change the way the offense is done. Like what we're doing right now is allowing these defenses to attack with these too high safeties, and we can't do anything about it. So I think Reed actually has been dreaming up an entirely new approach to attacking that defense. I don't know how much personnel plays into it, but I know that that they have a plan and they have new plays and new ideas and all that. That's what Reed is great at, So I think that, I think they'll be successful. Reed has done it again and again, kind of reinventing that offense. So
my ranking for Mahomes right now is quarterback 3. So I do have him a little bit lower, but to be fair, I've only done about 10% of my projections so far. So I've gone through 3 teams, and
you've gone through 3 and he's the 3rd.
No, I haven't done Mahomes.
Oh, okay.
No. In my best ball rankings that I have posted on Fantasy Pros,
okay.
Yeah, the listeners and viewers can check them out on the Fantasy Pros expert rankings. But Mahomes for me is 3rd. And let me pull up and from a best ball perspective, I know from like when we do projections, the expectation is normally that these are like the median outcomes, or if we were to like week to week, this should be pretty close to what we should expect to week. But in best ball, we're more concerned about what the upside looks like. And one of the projects I've been working on this off season is trying to identify players whose upside is significantly different than where their rankings are at. So Mahomes here, what we're looking at is the point distribution curve. Looks pretty bell curve-ish, to be honest. Like it's not one way or the other. And if you notice, there are little lines that go down about 3/4 of the way, and it's actually 84% of the way. So it's approximately 1 standard deviation away from the mean. And those are the 84th percentile, approximately weekly point outcomes. So the top 84th percentile outcome over the last few years in red was like 32, 33. Blue was almost the same, and orange was even higher, which is crazy to me that, in what we thought was a down year for Patrick Mahomes, he actually showed technically a little bit more upside than what we had seen in the previous 2 years. One of those years being the MVP year where he was throwing all the touchdowns.
Right.
So, but what I really like about Mahomes is that his ceiling is pretty consistent as well. In fact, in my research, the 73rd percentile outcome for Mahomes has been at least 25 fantasy points each of the last 3 seasons. The only other quarterback to do it, Dak Prescott. So Mahomes here consistently shows a really high ceiling. And I agree with you. I think the Chiefs have done enough to keep Mahomes where he is. He's not going to fall down. Like I'll talk about my boy Aaron Rodgers. You can see all of the Green Bay Packers stuff in the back. We'll talk about him in a bit. But I think that this is a stark contrast to what the Packers did versus what the Chiefs did this offseason.
Yeah, I can see that. That's the thing. Like the consistency that he's shown over the first 4 or 5 years of his career, it's pretty crazy, and it's easy to kind of take it for granted. That doesn't take anything away from the other top guys, like Josh Allen and Herbert, and even Dak. Obviously there's so many great quarterbacks in the league, but yeah, I guess it's all about cost too, right? So it's like if Josh Allen and Herbert and Mahomes are kind of like that top tier for most people, maybe some have Kyler Murray or a couple other guys in there, but where are you getting them, right? So for me in the early drafts, like Allen's been going in like the fourth, sometimes fifth, one time third. Herbert's been going in the fourth most of the time, or fifth. And then Mahomes usually falls to the sixth. So for me, it's like that becomes a really hard decision when he's behind those guys by a round or two, not to pull the trigger, because I do think his upside's so high. And, obviously I'm a fan too, but, it depends on your draft strategy and all that. But yeah, I think he's being undervalued now because the Chiefs struggled last year. I think that the struggles were less him than the whole offense and the structure and all that.
So if Mahomes is 1, who's 2 for you, Kevin?
2 is Josh Allen. Yeah.
Okay.
And I have them almost exactly. Their projections are within like 7 points. So I have Josh Allen just barely below, and his percentage, like a lot of for Allen depends on his accuracy. He's really improved that lately, but I have his accuracy down a little bit at around 64%. He's kind of gone between 60 and 68 or so in his career. So it's kind of hard to know if it's like a thing he's going to hold on to, that high accuracy, or if it's going to be like something that comes and goes. Obviously the rushing upside helps him a lot. Same with Kyler Murray, and even Herbert. I think if he was running the ball more, he would be right up there with Allen at the top, possibly the top guy. I think he has the athleticism. He just does not. They don't do design runs for him and stuff like they do with Allen.
He did a lot of running near the goal line his rookie year, and we saw, I think, 6 or 7 rushing touchdowns. Many of those went to Austin Eckler last season, and there's been rumblings out of Chargers camp that they want to reduce the amount of rushes they give to Austin Eckler. He's a weapon. That's how they've been describing Austin Eckler. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see more usage of Justin Herbert close to the goal line yet again, more of a regression there. But you mentioned Josh Allen as the quarterback too. So let's look at his distributions. And you can see the stark difference between 2019 and 2020. It was, and 25 fantasy points, like you'll see when we get down into like the quarterback 13, 14, like that's about where many of those high-end quarterback 2s end up with their 84th percentile outcome. But we saw, as you mentioned, the completion percentage means more completed passes, means more yards, means more touchdowns, means more drives continue. So the blue was what, 35 fantasy points is his upside, and then 36, 37 approximately 84th percentile last season. Maybe he goes down, like he's probably going to go down here, but by how much? Back to 35?
Right.
Like I think that when you're looking at upside, Josh Allen offers so much, and his ADP, I know you mentioned he's getting drafted 3rd, 4th, 5th round on in the high stakes drafts, but his ADP right now is 30th overall on Underdog.
Wow. Well, best ball, I guess that makes sense, right? You got to have multiple quarterbacks.
Well, best ball, but also it's given that it's half PPR, and I think most of the high stakes leagues are full PPR, right?
Yeah.
In half PPR, the quarterbacks who score more points are more valuable. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Oh no. My audio just went. Oh no.
I can hear you.
This is not good. Or my sounder. Why did my sounder go off? This is embarrassing.
I'm not sure what you mean. I mean, I can hear you.
This is great. Okay. I've never run into this issue before. So why don't I remove myself from the stream and then come back? I've never seen this before. Can you hear me?
I can.
I can't hear anything you're saying. I've even unplugged It's a problem with my computer.
Oh, that stinks.
Okay. You'll have to give me a second. Also keep your Twitter open, your Twitter DM, because I'm gonna have to probably send them the link. Is this working now?
Can you hear me?
Is this working now?
Can you hear me?
Talk to me.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
There we go. Okay. Crisis averted. Thanks, Kevin. Oh my gosh. I've never had that happen before. Although I feel honored that I would suffer such a problem as Evan Silva regularly suffers. So,
Oh, that's funny.
All right. Let's see what
I can hear you the whole time. I don't know if the audience could, but I never stopped being able to hear you. So,
all right. Awesome. Well, after Patrick Mahomes, who do you have at your quarterback 3 here?
so after Mahomes, and then I have Allen, and then my third is
Allen.
Is actually Kyler Murray, just ahead of Justin Herbert as far as my projections. Now, I will take Herbert ahead of Murray in drafts because of the risk factors with Murray with injury and stuff, but I have him projected for a few more points.
Well, let's throw Murray up here in the view. So as you can tell, the red was 2019. That was rookie year. First year is 27 fantasy points or so. Not too bad. But then in blue, 2 years ago, his sophomore year, we saw it almost 35.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, I think he got injured near the end of the season and that derailed a little bit. But the orange, I think it tempered off because of the Deandre Hopkins. Like we saw Hopkins just explode year 1 in Arizona. And then last year he gets injured, tries to come back, re-aggravates the whole bit. And
Right.
when you're missing the number 1 wide receiver on your team, upside is significantly affected.
Mm-hmm.
But I really do like the addition of Marquise Brown to this offense. Rondell Moore is an up-and-coming piece. Re-signing Zach Ertz as a safety blanket for Kyler Murray. There are a lot of really good options in this Cardinals offense. So I wonder where my projections will come out to, but Kyler Murray is probably going to be up there.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've seen him as low as like 10th in people's rankings. And I do think last year was like a lot to do with his injury. I don't think he's the best quarterback at all. I think the reason I have him this high is because his rushing upside is crazy. Like he's going to probably, designed runs at least 30, 40, 50 times, and that's money, plus he's going to scramble a lot and he's so stinking fast. He's good at running down the goal near the goal line. He's little and he's not the best arm in the world, but he's got a good one, and like you said, with Marquise Brown, they already have the chemistry going. I just think already has the security blanket with Ertz. I don't think he's really going to miss DeAndre Hopkins. And Speaking of
Ooh.
him, I have him super low in my rankings. Like I'm not touching Hopkins. I saw Dwayne McFarland talking about how he has Hopkins in like the majority of his drafts so far. I just don't want him. I think he's on the decline. He's going to come back to find Marquise Brown, number one, and he's going to have to fight more for targets. So that's a spicy take, but
Look, DeAndre Hopkins last year, we saw he had a couple games where he was back at his 30% target shares, but most of his games he was 22, 21, 18, 19, and that's more of your wide receiver 3/4, maybe getting a low end wide receiver 2 weeks. He
right.
does score a lot of touchdowns, and that's what'll keep him in that wide receiver 2 conversation. But missing 6 games,
Right.
we don't know what he's going to look like for those final 11 games when he comes back. And if you're playing like high stakes, I think you can, stash him and be okay, because you know that there are you can plan around him.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're in best ball leagues, especially like season long leagues, where like drafters, where you have to win each week, or it's a cumulative over the course of the season, or if you want to be winning the Underdog Best Ball Mania 3 regular season million, I think DeAndre Hopkins is a complete avoid in this Arizona offense, given that he's missing a third of the season, and we've seen the decline. He's going to be 30 years old during the season. He's already got the bag. He's got nothing else to play for, other than, like, what else does DeAndre Hopkins have to prove to us to be a Hall of Famer?
Yeah, I don't know about the Hall of Famer thing. I mean, maybe he needs more years of consistency, but I mean, you're right. You might be right that he's already there. I just think the biggest question mark for me is not only do you miss either, and even in high stakes leagues I play, I mean, the playoffs are like week 11 to 13 or so. So it's about half the season that you're missing him. But then when he comes back, I mean, he's going to be fighting with Marquise Brown, who was already his number one in college. Like, I think if they're rolling, I just have a hard time believing the coaches are going to be like, okay, now it's Hopkins' show. And like, now if I'm a coach, I'm be like, hey, hope you get some targets, man. Good luck. Like
Marquise Brown, half of his games last year were 25% target share or more.
Right. Yeah. He's fast, and he's a really good fit with that offense. So yeah. And just a real quick, I just looked up while you were having difficulties on Josh Allen. Last season, did you notice that his completion percentage shot way back down? Did you see that?
Yeah.
Like he was 58% in 2019, which is terrible. I mean, 2018, his rookie year was 52. So that's why nobody thought he was going to be any good. He went from 58 to 69 in 2020, but then this past year he fell back to 63, which is actually like a league average kind of a number, even below league average a little bit. So I hadn't even really paid attention to that. I did see that when I was doing my projections, but that's a really interesting stat. And I do wonder if he's going to stay in that 64 range, if he has, as much upside as he showed in those hottest stretches.
Yeah, I wonder if that's why Stephon Diggs was so affected last season. I wrote up a little blurb about Stephon Diggs and how he was consistently a high-end wide receiver too. But in 2020, he was like always getting your wide receiver 1, smash, always in the top 8, always in the top 7 weekly finishes. And then we just saw his ceiling just get chopped right off. Like and so I wonder if the fewer completions affected Stephon Diggs the most, because of he's commanding the most targets in that offense.
Right.
But I think a bounce back is in store for Stephon Diggs, insofar as looking at what happened when Emmanuel Sanders went out. Yeah, Gabriel Davis shot up, but Stephon Diggs also shot up.
And I mean, I think Allen's a great quarterback. The only other piece of it is the rushing, right? It's like at some point, these guys that are big rushers, the coaches are like, okay, you're getting a little older. Like, let's slow this down a little bit. Same thing with Kyler, you could say, like, is there going to be a point where they're like, let's stop? These injuries are adding up, and we don't know. With Lamar, they have not slowed down at all. So it's interesting, but it's just something to keep an eye on.
All right. After Kyler Murray,
then
we
it's
have
Herbert. Yeah.
Herbert. Let me pull up Herbert. So we only have 2 years of data on Herbert, but as you can tell, he's been always above the 30 fantasy points as 84th percentile outcome. He hasn't gotten to the Josh Allen level because he's missing the rushing touchdowns from time to time, and he doesn't rush for a lot of yards. But he throws a lot of passes. We know the Chargers are one of the fastest paced teams in the NFL, and they still have Keenan Allen. They have Mike Williams, Josh Palmer. They added Gerald Everett, who's, I think, 7 years younger than Jared Cook.
Sounds right.
So, but they commanded, here's the crazy thing, is Jared Cook commanded about a 15% target share in that Chargers offense, and commanding may be a strong term for that. But if Gerald Everett steps in, we could see more explosive plays from Herbert if he's still surrounded by the same personnel.
Yeah, no, I really like Everett this year. It's hard to know. I feel like a little nervous because it seems like they have never really featured a tight end since Antonio Gates there. But and obviously Everett is not Gates, but yeah, he's been such a tantalizing, like, oh, this guy could be great for like, it feels like 5 years,
Ever since he was drafted by the Rams, we were like, this guy could be it.
Yeah, so much athletic talent, but he's just never quite done it. So, but he's always been fighting with Higbee, or who was it last year? Who was he with last year?
Disley.
Yeah, and the Seattle offense is terrible. So, yeah, but yeah, this could be his. This is
That's so kind of you to describe Seattle's offense. That's the kindest thing I've heard so far.
And he had golf, right? In LA, he had golf. So I mean, now this is definitely his best.
Golf,
situation.
Russ Wilson.
Yeah,
well, he had Russ last season, but
it's not a fair, like, it was just a bad offense. Yeah, we'll see. I do hope he pops, and I think Herbert is just. He shocked everybody, man. Do you remember when he was coming in? Nobody thought he should be drafted high, and he's the real.
There's a lot of hate for Justin Herbert, and frankly, it scared me off in a couple of the rookie drafts I was doing. I instead decided I wanted to trade up in one of the leagues because I projected out that I would have gotten Herbert at that spot, and I look back on it, and it was a mistake.
Yeah, he's great, very impressive.
Yeah. Oh, man, I'm kicking myself for that one. After Justin Herbert, we have...
Unfortunately, my projections show me Tom Brady.
Unfortunately. Ooh.
Yeah, I hate the guy. I hate the man. No, so again, these are not how I would draft them, and I can give you my actual where I would draft them if you prefer. But yeah, just on a pure projections basis, I have Brady next. He's about around 35 points below Mahomes as far as pure projected stats.
Tom Brady is my quarterback 8. And my concern is he can't access with the rushing that like Josh Allen can, Kyler Murray can, Lamar Jackson. We haven't talked about Jackson yet, but Tom Brady, he's a pocket passer, and there's just a limited ceiling. As you can tell, like the last 2 seasons, like he's been below Justin Herbert in this 84th percentile outcome, but since he's joined the Buccaneers, like the red was when he was at the Patriots, 24, 25. So he's a back end quarterback 1, maybe quarterback 2. Now that he's joined the Bucs, they literally overlap. You can't tell the difference between the yellow and the blue. They've been the same.
And that's over 30. I mean, that's impressive.
Yeah,
he's going to be missing Gronk, and he's going to be missing Godwin for part of it. I have not changed my projections after Gronk announced he's not coming back because I think he's still going to be back, but we'll see. I just think it's, again, like I mentioned earlier, pass rate over expectation. The Bucs threw a ridiculous amount last season. They were almost 70%, which is absolutely unheard of. They were high 60s. And when you do these projections, I mean, if you have a 60-40 split, that's like, oh, wow, that's a big passing team. They were incredibly heavy in the passing department, the pass heaviest team last season. So a lot of my projections were based on that. I have them throwing 682 times this season, again, being the heaviest passing team. So again, at some point when you're passing that much, and if you're a competent quarterback, even if you don't throw deep that often, I have Brady at 66% completions. You're going to be over 5,000 yards just purely based on that many.
The volume.
Yeah, the volume. And I have him at 37 touchdowns. Again, that's in line with where his typical touchdown percentages are. So even though he doesn't run the ball, he doesn't, he's a pure, all that stuff's true. He's throwing the ball so stinking much. So, yeah.
Okay, humor me. Since you have your projections up, Mike Evans, he's going as the wide receiver 7 right now on Underdog Fantasy. I was talking with Jody Smith of Full Time Fantasy last night about wide receivers, and he and I both agreed that Mike Evans needs to be in the second tier of wide receivers, same as Stephon Diggs right now, and CD Lamb. Instead of being drafted mid or the back end of the second round, Mike Evans needs to be a beginning of the second round, or late first round consideration here at wide receiver. We know he's going to catch touchdowns. If Tom Brady's throwing 37 touchdowns, a lot of them are going to have to go to Mike Evans, right?
Right. Yeah, and again, I haven't updated this with a minus Gronk. I have Mike Evans at wide receiver 10.
Okay.
That I could see that moving up to more like wide receiver 8, which would be right next to Diggs and Debo and Tyreek and those guys. So yeah, I think he's right there on the borderline of that second tier, third tier. I don't think I would take him till more like the end of the second, but a lot of that is because of the actual statistical information that he gave us last season. Like his actual numbers declined as far as his depth of target and his overall production looked like, is he getting to that around 30 range where he's less explosive and that kind of thing? But you like we're talking about Brady, like at some point it's like someone's got to catch the touchdowns, and he's good enough to keep producing. He could put up 15 touchdowns a season. I mean, I wouldn't be that surprised.
And there's a legacy of him maintaining a 9th straight 1,000-yard season. That's something that is really meaningful to him and to the Bucs, and making sure that he keeps that going. So
I don't think it's a bad pick at all ever. Even if you took him at the back end of the first, I wouldn't argue with you. It's just a matter of taste, I think, at that point.
Coke and Pepsi. Let's keep moving on. After Tom Brady.
Let's see here. I have Russell Wilson. That's a spicy one.
I like Wilson. Wilson is my quarterback 7 right now. I do have him ahead of Brady, but
so we're pretty close on, and that's much higher than the field on Wilson. Again, just based on my own research and what I think the Broncos are going to do, and how Wilson, I think to a large degree has been hamstrung by the Seattle offense. I'm not a fan of Pete Carroll and the way that they've run their show there. I think Wilson, not only has he not been allowed to have any
cook.
Really. Yeah, to cook. But like obviously just the percentage of plays that they run the ball on, it's just kind of it's too old school, and it doesn't enable him to show what he's. If you have a top 10 quarterback in this league, you got to let him throw the ball, man. Like that's how you win in this league. So yeah, I think he's going to have a good season. Obviously has the best weapons he's ever had. You can make the argument Metcalf and Lockett are comparable, but across the board, having so many weapons, I think is his best situation. Not to mention the running back. So, yeah, I think he's gonna be great.
Good luck naming who was the wide receiver 3 for the Seattle Seahawks last season or any of the previous seasons. Nobody knows. Like
I did look it up. Let's see, what's his name? Now that you got me,
D. Eskridge.
Freddie Swain. That's it.
Oh, Freddie Swain. Yeah, that's right. I rest my case. Tim Patrick over Freddie Swain all day, and then the wide receiver 4, KJ Hamler. Give me KJ Hamler over Freddie Swain. The wide receiver 4.
I love this tight end they drafted too. Now they're going to have 2 tight ends that are able to catch the ball and they're super fast with the running backs. It's a very good offense, which makes me angry because I'm a Chiefs fan, but I think they're going to be really good.
That means the Chiefs are going to be passing a lot. The Broncos are going to be passing a lot. The Chargers are going to be passing a lot. The Raiders are going to be passing. This is going to be a high fireworks shootout. You mentioned it, sort of division, and that's what, like, the NFL is better with Russell Wilson in this division, even if the Chiefs fans don't like.
I mean, look at this graph. I mean, last season he was way down from what he had done the previous 2. That's crazy.
Yeah. The Seahawks were running the fewest plays in the NFL last season, and I think, if I got the stat correct, they ran so few plays that it ended up being a full game fewer than the 31st team.
Wow.
Like you
That's a
lost
pity.
a full game's worth of fantasy points by having Seahawks on your team.
I remember I had Metcalf on a lot of teams, and I remember just being like, wait, how did have they only passed the ball like 12 times? It was like in the third quarter, it was pretty amazing how bad they were.
But that meant high efficiency. We still saw immense spike weeks from DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. I talked about this yesterday on the podcast. Sorry, I went on an aside. But Tyler Lockett is going as wide receiver 45 on Underdog, Kevin. And like, I'm sure he's going a little bit higher in the high stakes, but maybe not.
Really?
He's going wherever he's going. On whatever site you're drafting, Tyler Lockett is being drafted too late. He is one of only 3 wide receivers to be in the top 5 of wide receiver 1 rate each of the last 2 seasons. The other 2, Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams, both are being drafted as top 10 wide receivers right now. And Tyler Lockett is almost outside of the top 48.
It's crazy. I mean, I get why. I mean, I've had the chance to draft him and I haven't, but it's mainly because like big question mark, man. Like, how can we trust Geno Smith? Or Drew Lock, man. These guys are just, I mean, Geno Smith looked okay in stretches last season. So maybe he'll be okay. And at some point you have to say, if these guys are good enough, doesn't matter if it's an NFL quarterback, he'll get him the ball, right? Maybe that's what you're saying.
Yep. I'm hoping Baker Mayfield gets there because that'll be chef's kiss.
I think Baker, I don't know. I'm not a fan. I think Geno might be just as good as Baker.
Oh. All right. Enough about Russell Wilson, Baker Mayfield, and this ridiculousness. Let's keep rolling right along, Kevin. Who's after Russ?
After Russell Wilson, I have Jalen Hurts.
Jalen Hurts. So a story about Jalen Hurts before we get into your analysis. About 2 months ago, I posted a video on my YouTube. It was one of my first videos about Jalen Hurts versus Joe Burrow. And at that time, Joe Burrow was being drafted as the quarterback 6, only behind Murray, Jackson, Mahomes, Herbert, and Josh Allen.
Mm-hmm.
And I made the argument, especially in the best ball leagues, that it should be Jalen Hurts because his quarterback win rate last year was 45%. Compare that to Joe Burrow's quarterback win rate was 28%. So that's the rate of a quarterback scoring at least 22 fantasy points for you. Like, you need at least that baseline. Let the other players and chips fall where they may be, but you can't afford to have your quarterback lose, get lower than 22 fantasy points. And Jalen Hurts was doing that 45% of the time. Joe Burrow was doing it 28% of the time. And so I made the argument that it should be Jalen Hurts by far. And unfortunately, the ADPs have now shifted, and I can't get Jalen Hurts anymore as the quarterback 8 or 9 anymore. Call me the ADP mover here, Kevin. But talk to me about Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I mean, the hard part with Hurts is that they do not throw the ball enough. At least last season, it was a ridiculous overrunning as far as their play choice. I don't know why that was. They started the season pretty pass heavy, and then they shifted. I think they just couldn't figure out the passing game, so like, forget it. We're just going to run the ball.
Well, and they wanted to win. They were winning.
It was working, right? So I mean, there's that piece where it's like, are they going to keep that up because it was working last season? We don't know. I have them only throwing 546 passes, which is, one of the lower ones in the league. I mean, at least definitely bottom 10. But still, if he throws a 65% completion rate, that's going to put him over 4,000 yards, which is fine. And then the fact is, no matter what their pass rate is, if they bump it up or if they keep it what it was, they do a lot of designed runs. He does a lot of scrambling. And I have him at the second highest rush attempts in the league, only behind Lamar. So if he's running the ball over 100 times, which is what I have him projected for, about 120, you have to think with his athletic skill, he's going to go at least 600 yards plus. He's very good in the red zone running the ball. So that's really, it's strange for a quarterback to really have his value more as a runner, or at least the same. But then, you also can factor in they added pass catching skill They've got A.J. Brown as a humongous addition, and then Devonta Smith, you assume he's going to take a step. Hurts apparently already has a connection with A.J. Brown, so if that took a big jump to where the coaches were like, hey, actually, we should pass the ball 60% of the time, then it's like a new, and I don't know if Hurts has the talent to do that. Like if he's as good as like Herbert or Murray, I don't know if he, so far, obviously not. But I mean, if they really maybe putting the talent around him boosted him to that, to a new level, I think that's definitely possible. So I think he's a solid pick in those middle rounds.
Last year, it was the first 11 weeks or so, he was always a top 10 quarterback. Weekly finish is getting the floor, as you mentioned, through the rushing, and had the occasional spike week. But I think that's the dimension that A.J. Brown brings to this offense is he can take one to the house. You put it in his hands. A.J.
Right.
Brown is big and strong and fast, and he can take it 60 yards, 50 yards, 75 yards, all the way to for a huge touchdown. And then you start to see this tail end of the graph move more toward, like, it stretches out a little bit longer.
Right.
And there's your upside.
Right.
There's the difference. Or this entire graph shifts a little bit, and you start to see, because this is about 28, 29 points. You start to see this be more like 31, 32 points, and it moves a little bit further. So
right.
A.J. Brown's gonna run the routes that J.J. Arcega-Whiteside and Jalen Reagor were running.
Yeah. Well, and Devonta Smith was good. How much better will he be when he's not the number one and he gets the second best corner? I mean, that guy was a legit prospect coming out that I really liked. Yeah, he's small, but who cares? He's going against their second best corner. He will burn them,
Yeah, he can ball for sure.
If Hurts can put the ball in their hands, honestly, he could be like one of maybe top 2-3 quarterback this year. It's just a matter of how accurate he can be, how good at reading defenses, and we don't know that yet, But
I think it's within the range of outcomes that he's the quarterback one overall.
Yeah, it could be.
Let's move on to the next.
Tannehill. Tannehill put up big stats because of A.J. Brown taking it to the house. So if he did it,
yes,
yeah.
No, I like that insight.
Yeah.
Although, to be fair, A.J. Brown goes from one of the run heaviest offenses to one of the run heaviest offenses.
Yeah.
Kevin, let's keep going. Who's after Jalen Hurts?
Then I have Dak. I have Dak just a smidge ahead of Lamar. They're kind of together. I think Dak is the beneficiary of another offense that loves to throw the ball. I have them throwing over 630 times. I think he's gonna get close to sniffing 5,000 yards just based on that pass volume. I know he lost some receiving ability for sure in his group there, but I think Lamb is ready to take over as the number one. I don't think there's going to be a big drop off from Cooper to Lamb. There might be a little bit of a struggle early on without Gallup in there. But they did draft the rookie that I really like a lot. What's his name again?
Jalen Tolbert.
Yeah, Tolbert. I think when I watched his tape, I liked him a lot. I mean, super fast, super long, really, really long arms. Like I think he could be like their red zone beast as far as throwing up balls to him and stuff. And obviously I like Schultz a lot. The running backs, I don't like Zeke, but he's fine. He's going to do the job. So I just think it's going to be a good offense again. I just wish they had somebody else besides Mike McCarthy in there, but still, I think he'll do okay. I know you probably have some history in your own heart with Mike McCarthy, but
yes.
Anyway,
we'll leave McCarthy at that, but affectionately.
And a lot of people were talking about his rushing too. I think he's going to get a little bit of rushing juice too. I mean, he in the first couple of years he did. I think they were being careful with him last season with his coming back from the leg, but I could see him getting about 300 yards and 2-3 touchdowns, and that'll give him a little boost too.
Definitely. I think that this is an opportunity for him to move toward that 31 spot, move it over just a little bit with the rushing. You mentioned the devastating knee injury. He was passing a lot, and that's why he was able to, get to that 30, 29, almost 30 spot. But as you mentioned, like, he's got some shifts in his wide receiver core, but we love Jalen Tolbert, a third-round pick. His player profiler comp, Adam Thielen.
I did not see that.
Yeah, I love it. I
Hmm.
love it. He's built almost the same as Thielen. I think they're like 6'1", 6'2", 195, 200 pounds. But if he can step in immediately, which he was, Tolbert was a 4-year player. I think it's South Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
And so has more experience. It's not as though he's an early declarer and needs to get more NFL ready. These 4-year players who are good at football can more seamlessly jump right in. And it's possible that within the first couple weeks, James Washington is relegated to the wide receiver 3. And I talked with Edwin Porras about Michael Gallup a couple weeks or a couple days ago, Dr. Edwin Porras, physical therapist, and he said Gallup probably isn't going to come back until probably around mid-November anyways. So this is by
Yeah.
that time, the offense will be pretty established. And I think Gallup is more of a 2023 play.
And I think, even though none of us really like James Washington, he's a actual NFL wide receiver. So he doesn't have to be your 2 or your 1. He can still contribute and make a difference in that keep that offense going. He'll be where you want him to be. So I think that's a positive for Dak. I cannot believe that over 40 blue line though. That is insane.
Yeah, there was the injury year, so you just have to take it with a grain of salt.
Okay, so it was only a few games.
Only a couple games. So yeah,
Gotcha.
you can just throw that one out. Don't worry about it.
That's still impressive. And
But
it shows you his upside. I mean, he does have that kind of crazy upside because they throw it so much. So
absolutely, you get one big spike week out of him. But even like in the non-crazy years, he's uber consistent. And this is what you'll notice from these quarterbacks is they're really consistent. The wide receivers, they can get pretty wild with their upside, but the quarterbacks are really consistent, which is why, they're replaceable in a sense. Like, why would you, you'd pay up for Josh Allen, but when you start getting into like the Dak Prescotts of the world and the Tom Brady's of the world and Russell Wilson's, they're all pretty close to the same and they're consistently the same. So when you mentioned earlier in the podcast, take the cheaper one or take the value, like they're in similar tiers. Like those types of quarterbacks are in similar tiers.
they are, and they're clumped. And if you look at my like fantasy point projections, I have essentially my top tier they're projected for between 376 and 399. And that's kind of like that median projection you were talking about. They could go 450, they could go 350, but that's kind of where I have them projected. Then the second tier is between 340 and 360, and that includes all these guys we've been talking about right now. And then you start to jump down, right? So then you really with Carr and Stafford and Rodgers, those guys, you're going to lose like a solid like 2 to 3 points a game by jumping to them. The reason why you would draft Allen or Mahomes or Herbert is because, again, you're gaining compared to like a Derek Carr, you're gaining potentially 4 to 5 points a week, depending on how things play out. And that can make a huge difference. But again, it's about where you're getting them and what the cost is and all that.
So all those things, plus if you're trying to stack, if that's something that the strategy you want to attack, roster construction comes into play with how much draft capital am I investing in taking Josh Allen in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, comparing that to getting Dak Prescott in the 9th, 10th, 11th round. And then I can take my Christian McCaffrey's, my Jonathan Taylor's early, my CD Lamb's in the 2nd round. In fact, that's one of my favorite things to do is take CD Lamb in the 2nd round and just wait on Dak Prescott.
Yep. No, I think it's a great strategy. I've been shocked at how late Dak's going. And when I have an earlier quarterback, but if I don't, I want to take Dak every time because he's literally there in the 10th or 11th every single draft. And it's like, why? Is it just
there's quarterback exhaustion, I think, because by that point in ADP, Dak Prescott on Underdog Fantasy is going as a quarterback 10. So by that time, and I'm assuming it's pretty similar to on other sites, even though like the ADPs and where they're going might be a little different. Like overall, Prescott going at quarterback 10, that means there have been 9 other teams that have taken quarterbacks off the board. They're not looking to get a second quarterback at that spot.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And the the teams who haven't drafted quarterback so far probably aren't looking for a quarterback at that spot anyways, and they're just going to keep pushing it. And one of my former co-host Billy, he will push quarterback until round 15 and like take Matt Ryan as quarterback 1. Like, you know, so if that may be why Dak Prescott just keeps getting pushed down and down and down, is this quarterback exhaustion.
Yeah, and I think there's just a general negativity toward Dallas right now. Like, I don't think it's probably fair, and I think it'll probably shift. But I think the loss of Cooper kind of put some people off of them.
All right, after Dak, we have...
Then it's Lamar.
Oh, finally. I was wondering when we get to Lamar Jackson.
Much higher for you?
Yeah, Lamar Jackson is my quarterback 4 right now.
Okay, yeah. He is lower for me, I think, mainly because of his, how run heavy the Ravens are. I think that's the main reason, because his pass attempts are actually the second lowest in the league in my projections. 525, which is extremely low. I have the Ravens about 50 to 52%. I can't remember exactly, but in pass run split, because they love to stink and run the ball, and they're going to have J.K. Dobbins coming back, Gus Edwards coming back. They drafted Beatty. They have all these options, and they love to run with Lamar too, which is good for his stats. But I think maybe that, obviously I have 153 rushes. I have him running a lot, but maybe that comes back a little bit. It's hard to know. He's not a super accurate passer. He lost Marquise Brown. I mean, I like Rashad Bateman, but if he's a 65% passer and they don't pass it very much, he's not even going to pass for 4,000 yards. His touchdown efficiency came way down last season. I don't know if you remember his MVP season. He was at 9% touchdown percent, which is ludicrous, like almost never been done kind of ludicrous.
Yep.
And then it came all the way down. I think it was 3 last season.
Yeah, that sounds about
4.
right.
It was not good. So obviously he's got Mark Andrews. He's got Rashad Bateman. He'll be okay. I just think he's going to be more like, what is this? Quarterback 8, quarterback 9, somewhere in there.
Interesting. So this is one of the teams I have done projections for, Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned, so how many pass attempts did you have Lamar?
Yeah, we can compare. I have him for 525.
Okay, I'm at 558.
Okay.
I'm a little bit higher, and I think so my reasoning behind a higher pass attempt is I'm not as bullish on J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards coming back. After talking with Edwin Porras about Dobbins and the reports that we got out of Baltimore, we haven't seen Dobbins do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And his knee injury was more devastating than your normal ACL tear.
Okay.
So the expectation is that he's going to miss games, probably 4 games is my guess. Mm-hmm. So I have Dobbins only for 140 something rush attempts, which means that Lamar's going to be rushing a lot more. So I have Lamar's rush attempts up, the pass attempts up, because they didn't replace, like, who else? Tyler Beatty's going to get some rushes. Mike Davis is going to get some rushes. This is the Devonta Freeman, Latavius Murray situation all over again, which is why we saw the Ravens have the 9th most pass attempts last season. I think it's true. A little bit more.
And you could be right. I would just say, based on how it played out for them, that when they had to pass it more, and then how the season went, the sense I get is that Harbaugh was like, screw that. We're going back to running the ball. And I could be wrong. I think also he wants to protect Lamar. He does not want to, get Lamar hurt or have Lamar throwing picks, that kind of thing. He's not the most accurate guy. So a lot of that goes in my head. But the biggest question would be, what do you have his completion percentage at?
64.
Okay. So we're pretty close on that. I have 65. But then, so where do you have his passing yards?
I have him at 38-39.
Okay. Yeah. And I'm 39-38. So we actually are very close. So maybe your touchdowns. What are your touchdowns at?
22 passing touchdowns.
Yes. Well, actually, I don't know how you have, well, maybe it's just what where you're at with the other quarter. It'll be interesting when you finish your projections. Let me know where he's at, because our numbers are pretty darn
So
close.
I looked at where like if you were to put it at 17 points, 17 games, and it would have been about the quarterback 3, quarterback 4 last season based on all the project. Oh, the big thing for me too is the rushing.
Yeah, what do you
So
have?
the median rush. This is crazy to me. The median rush share for Lamar Jackson last season was 37%
Of rushes?
Yeah,
Of his team's rushes.
of his team's rushes in a game. The median rush share was 37%. And that's what I used for my projection for this coming year, given the injury to J.K. Dobbins that I anticipate he'll be out for a while. I don't know
What does
about
that give
Gus
him?
Edwards.
How many rushes does that give him?
Over 200.
Oh, okay. Well, that's the biggest difference. Yeah, because I
Yeah.
have him at 153. But yeah, a lot of that
I'm
is
at
probably based on-
203, 1,100 plus rush yards.
There you go. Yeah, and if that was my projection, yeah, I would have him top 2, top 3, definitely. And a lot of these are narrative things where we think through it. We think through how we think the teams are going to go, what the
Right.
coaches are going to do, and we think, well, this is most likely to me. My whole narrative about them wanting to run the ball more and wanting to protect Lamar could be totally wrong. I think
they were at like a 56, 57%, pass rate last season. I bumped it down to 51.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's fair. It's really our two projections. The biggest difference is those 50 rushes, because if he gets those extra 50 rushes, then he probably will get 400 more yards. You know what I mean?
Right.
And more touchdowns too. So.
But I think the interesting thing for us is our passing is almost the same, and that he's gonna be low in the pass he's gonna have few passing yards and few passing touchdowns because he's only thrown to Bateman and Mark Andrews. Like there's no other player aside from Bateman and Mark Andrews that I have at a 10% target share or higher.
Wow. Yeah. I'd have to look. I don't remember. I think my third on the list was Devin Duvernay.
Yep, Duvernay is
with
my
60 targets. Yeah, I think you're right.
I have 50 targets for him and only a 9% share.
James Proche, whatever his name is, and
Proche, I have 1% share.
Yeah, it's just gross. It's ugly. I actually think that they're gonna try to involve multiple tight ends. This Charlie Kolar, the rookie, I like a lot. I think he's gonna get some, a few targets here and there, but no more than 2 a game or so. So it's just.
I only have Kolar at 11 total targets. Yeah. Boyle's working his way back. He was always used, but as a second tight end. But nevertheless, we're getting into the minutia of the Baltimore Ravens. But I think that you're right. It depends on what they do with the rushing. Like if the Baltimore Ravens want to lower their rushing, it's gonna have to be taken out of Lamar, because I don't think it's going to be taken out of the other running backs. Yeah, we'll see what that running back.
A lot of it might depend on J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, and then how they feel about Beatty and Davis. So that's definitely something for people to watch in training camp, right? The health and how they like these other players.
Well, we'll move on here in a second, but I just want to for the viewers out there, Tyler Beatty. He's going as running back 81 on Underdog, ADP 215, literally a last round pick. This is the type of player that just make him part of the rotational selections. Sometimes take him, sometimes don't in the last round of your drafts. Consider Tyler Beatty in the last round. His player profile comp is Gio Bernard, for what it's worth.
that didn't sell me.
Look, prime Gio Bernard was like top 12 pass catching running back for Cincy. So, nevertheless, after Jackson, we've got.
After Jackson, let me get back to the QB stats here. After Jackson, I have Joe Burrow.
Yes. Where does Joe Burrow rank for you? 9, 10?
Let me look at my actual rankings. I actually have him up at 7 for actually how I would draft them, because he's so safe. So a lot of how I actually do my rankings is I factor in these projections and I add in their relative safety, injury risk, that kind of thing. So Joe Burrow is up at 7, but his actual numbers, he would be down at 7, 8, 9, 10. He's been 10.
Oh, thank you. This makes me feel better because Joe Burrow is my 10th ranked best ball quarterback.
There you go.
I mean,
a fair ranking.
It's obvious why you want to be high on Joe Burrow. He's got Jamar Chase. He's got T. Higgins. He's got Tyler Boyd. They bring in Hayden Hurst, who's a professional tight end, former first-round pick out of Baltimore, right? He was in Baltimore
Drafted by Baltimore, yeah.
Drafted by Baltimore. So he's on the team. We saw the spike weeks that an old CJ Uzama coming off an ACL tear had. Hayden Hurst has got to be better than that. So we know that there exists upsides. Like we can see the little bumps right here. Let me go right here. We can see the bumps. But my concern about Joe Burrow is that, yeah, he might be like a safe 18 to 20 points. But for him to get to that 22 to 25 point range or even higher, he needs extreme efficiency from Jamar Chase. And if he loses any of those wide receivers, that's a major concern because Burrow, yeah, he didn't rush a lot last year due to the ACL, but he's a pocket passer. He's not a rusher anyways.
Right. Yeah, I think he has some athletic ability as far as his ability to get out of the pocket. He's pretty fast. You saw him run for a long touchdown in his rookie season. But yeah, they certainly don't design many for him. Once in a while, you'll see like a zone read where he takes it and runs. But yeah, I feel like he's one of those guys that will get, 200 yards, 100 to 200 yards rushing. That's about it. They almost never use him. Like even Tom Brady will get you 3-4 touchdowns on those sneaks at the goal line. They don't use him with that. He's just not a bruiser. He's just a very smallish kind of guy, but even though he has some athletic talent, as far as his arm talent, he's amazing. I mean, he's one of the best throwers of the football, even if he doesn't have super big, like powerful arm, super accurate guy, really good deep ball. So yeah, I mean, I think that the biggest thing with Burrow is I have him at 70% completion, which is top in the league. He was excellent with his completion rate last season. So even if they only throw it, 550 to 600, he's going to put up close to 5,000 yards just based on that completion percentage and having those kind of weapons around him. So I think he's one of those that's like a very, very safe floor, I think, because of the weapons and because of his accuracy, even if he doesn't have the spike potential that some of these other athletes have.
Yeah, you mentioned he's safe. He's got the accuracy. He'll be able to complete a lot of the passes. And now he's going into the season with more confidence. He probably doesn't have the thoughts in the back of his mind of the last time I stepped on a football field, this is what happened to my knee.
Right.
That he probably entered into 2021 with. As much as like athletes will say, yeah, I'm confident in my abilities. Like, dude, like we know what you just went through.
Yeah, the fact that he just did that coming off of that is pretty amazing. I mean, he's a stinking confident dude. I mean, I got a lot of respect for him as a player. That guy he's a baller.
But my bucket list includes smoking a cigar with Joe Burrow. So
I like it.
Next after Burrow,
I have Trey Lance.
Ooh, Trey Lance. Yeah, talk to me about Trey Lance because I pulled up. So this is Trey Lance's little blurb. Okay, so you see
not much data.
Yeah, not much data, and it kind of looks like an elephant, right? And the leg of the ear of the elephant, however you want to think about it, is at about 20. And then give me a moment while I scroll to another rookie from last year who's getting drafted much later and whose bell curve looks almost exactly the same.
Yep.
And then another rookie quarterback whose bell curve looks kind of the same.
that starting point is a little lower, isn't it?
Yeah. So as you can tell, like the rookies last year for quarterback did not fare very well, but there's reasons for optimism for Trey Lance. That there's rushing and he's got a stronger arm than Jimmy Garoppolo, but he didn't play a lot of snaps in college. He took a year off, mostly a year off due to COVID, I think. And he was really raw last year, made a lot of mistakes. There was not a lot of confidence about, although taking a step back, the San Francisco 49ers coaching staff is perhaps the most temperamental in in all of the NFL. Like if you get on their bad side, if you get on Shanahan's bad side, you're in the doghouse for a long time. Just ask Dante Pettis.
Yep. I'm with you. I mean, so the thing I would say about Lance is that I'm not drafting him here at QB 11. So we're through 10, and this is kind of a big tier break for me between actually where I have my rankings. Jalen Hurts is my 10, like based on risk factors, right? So he's right there. And then I have a big tier break to this next bunch, and it includes Stafford, Carr, Rodgers, Cousins, Tannehill, Lance, Fields, Jones. All those guys are in that next. And Jones, that's a spicy one. We can get there if you want to. But yeah, I actually think Trey Lance and Justin Fields are right there together. And I agree with your graph. I like Justin Fields a lot. As far the reason Trey Lance is here, and actually the next one on my list is Fields, as far as my actual projections, is because of their rushing upside, right? It's the same kind of thing with Lamar. I don't trust them. They're very risky. They could get injured. They're not very accurate so far, but upside is there because these dudes are athletes and they can run the ball. So Lance, I have 115 rushes. Fields, I have 119 rushes. I have them both over 600 yards, both over 5 touchdowns. So that alone is going to give them that floor, right?
Absolutely. You mentioned Mac Jones. This is the Mac Jones.
Oh, actually, no. It's even spicier. Not Mac Jones. Daniel Jones.
Oh, Daniel Jones. Yeah, we can look at Daniel Jones here. But Mac Jones, all 4 of those rookie quarterbacks, their 84th percentile.
Same thing, yeah.
Were all at about 20 fantasy points.
Interesting.
For various reasons. Like Fields had the sucky coach. Mac Jones didn't throw the ball a lot. Mm-hmm. Trevor Lawrence, sucky coach again. And now you have Trey Lance, who got 2 spot starts, really. Right. And had a lot to work on. So we expect all these quarterbacks to improve, but let's move to Daniel Jones then. And we can see that he's wild. Yeah. He's like the wide receivers of the quarterback position. It's
that 2019 that people are, not remembering. It feels like, like he actually has a lot of upside in my view. And you add in Brian Daboll and changing the offense. I mean, the ineptitude of the Giants coaching staff last season is pretty baffling. I mean, they actually had decent players, and Jason Garrett found a way to make them terrible. I mean, and I don't think Daniel Jones is great by any means, but he didn't use him as a rusher. He didn't scheme ways to help him be accurate, just complete passes. It was just a disaster. So if Daboll is even like just okay, you could really see a resurgence for Jones.
I mean, look, he had an 84th percentile outcome that was like 32 points.
Yeah.
What? Joe Burrow first 2 seasons was at 25-ish. Okay. Mm-hmm. Daniel Jones can run. He can pass. There were times where people were like, Daniel Jones is better than Josh Allen. Remember those days?
Yes, I do.
It was, and that was not crazy. You weren't viewed as a crazy person saying that, oh yeah, there's quarterback controversy between Jones and Allen. And now Daniel Jones gets the offensive coordinator, Josh Allen.
Yeah.
And he's surrounded by weapons. Mm-hmm. Kenny Galladay. You've got Wan'Dale Robinson. You've got Kadarius Toney. You've got another deep threat in Darius Slayton.
You've got Saquon Barkley.
Saquon Barkley, right? Yeah, a healthy Saquon. Lord have mercy. This is teeing up to be a real bounce back year for the New York Giants for Daniel Jones. And I think they declined his 5th-year option, but they may sign him to a longer term deal, or wherever he signs, it's going to be pretty lucrative because.
And look, he could suck. I mean, they could be awful again this year, and we could be totally wrong. But I think that the potential is there. And I'm not. Again, I took Daniel Jones yesterday in one of the football guys drafts, FFPC, 20th round. So it's not like I'm jumping up there and taking him in the 13th. But if he's there at the end, like I'll take him as my second quarterback. Sure, I think he's got the upside.
He's definitely got the upside, and I think he's more valuable though in best ball leagues than in any of your redraft or leagues where you have to manage the starting roster. It's going to be harder to pick out the weeks where Daniel Jones is
Sure.
going to give you the spike
He's
weeks.
a backup, if a spot start guy. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Are there any other quarterbacks you want to hit on before we call it a night here, Kevin?
Those are the main guys that I am trying. Like, I would say in leagues, try to get one of the top, 10 guys if you can. One of those guys we've mentioned, and there's the question mark with Deshaun Watson. I'm just assuming he's not going to be there this year. But those 10 that we mentioned, I think you get one of those, you have a little bit of a leg up. If you miss, and I've seen, I think the next guys would be guys like Stafford and Carr and Rodgers. I think those guys are fine. If you miss, try to grab one of those. Like you mentioned that. Billy will wait till the 15th and grab Matt Ryan. I think you can do that, but you're giving up 4 to 5 points a game. Even if you jump up in the 10th or 11th and grab one of these middle range guys, you're in a lot better shape. So that'd be what I say about quarterback position.
Well, for kicks and giggles, here's Jacoby Brissett over the last 3 years.
What the heck is because he only had a few starts there.
Right.
Wow.
So back in 2019, when he was the starter for Indy, his 84th percentile outcome was only like 23 points.
Yeah.
You can leave him on waivers. Let someone else use him as a roster clog, honestly.
That's almost, surprising he was that high if you think about it. He's just really, really bad.
The wheels up for David Njoku, but wheels way down for Amari Cooper if this is, going to be the outcome for most of the season. As of this recording, Deshaun Watson's legal process has gone through 3 days of deliberations, and the judge is probably going to come back tomorrow with a ruling. So we'll see what happens, but it looks, the feeling right now is that Jacoby Brissett's going to get significant playing time this season.
Yeah, I think if Watson even gets a full season suspension, I think even if he is able to negotiate it down, it'll be half the season. I don't see it being less than that.
Yeah, I don't either. Deshaun Watson, pretty much an avoid for me. I think in the 120 drafts or so I've done this year so far, I have 1 or 2 shares of Deshaun Watson.
That's a lot of drafts, man. Hopefully they're only like $1 to $5 a piece.
Thankfully, not too bad. But nevertheless. All right. Well, Kevin, I appreciate you jumping on, talking quarterbacks with me, especially these top ones and what their outcomes could look like and their projections and our reasonings behind where we have them ranked. I really appreciate, chatting with me tonight, discussing. We didn't hit on one of my favorites. Actually, let's take a moment before we leave. The best rookie quarterback among all of them in their upside, 84th percentile outcome, Davis Mills.
And I have him in that next tier underneath, he's with Mac Jones and, Trevor Lawrence and those guys. Yeah.
It's not crazy. It's not crazy. All right. Well, you can follow Kevin on Twitter at KevinScottFF. Thanks for popping in today, discussing quarterback rankings with me.
Thanks for having me.
Tomorrow, I'm going to have Emily Lefko of 6-Pack Fantasy, I believe. And she also does work at Dynasty Nerds. She's going to talk with me about sleepers and breakout candidates. So tune in tomorrow, 9 p.m. Eastern, for those who want to find out about our sleepers and breakouts for the 2022 season. I'm sure it's going to be full of spicy takes. Bring the jalapenos to this one. But so that's on the docket for tomorrow. And then next week, I don't know what the week is going to be programming wise, just because of July 4th and Scott Fishbowl is going to kick off here soon. So I got to do some prep for that. I might do a podcast where I talk about the Scott Fishbowl rules and things like that as we get into it. But that's the plan for this coming week. And then I don't know when baby number 4 is going to come. Stalder baby number 4 here is due here in a few weeks. John Ignatius. We'll see when he decides he wants to make it into this world. But I will, of course, keep all of those things up to date. And that's why I'm trying to get as much content in right now as I can before he comes and the sleepless nights and the mindless Netflix watching continues. Are you still watching? Well, I guess, So thanks everyone for tuning in. Appreciate you stopping by. Make sure you subscribe to the Best Bell YouTube channel. Click on the link. I think I'm going to put it other side of the screen here. I think over on Kevin's side is going to be the subscribe link. Make sure to subscribe. It'll give you all the notifications for up-to-date videos, and check out the website, bestbellfantasy.com, bestbellfantasy.com, where I put all the podcasts, and I'll be updating ranks and on Fantasy Pros. And of course, I'll be updating blogs throughout the regular season, so you can check out all those things there. Kevin, do you have any plugs you want to put in before we call it a night tonight?
Yeah, besides Twitter, just check out my podcast, Grinding the Data. I'm starting a projection series here during July, where I dive into all the projections for all 32 teams, and kind of to hopefully potentially help people with their rankings. So be on the lookout for that. You can subscribe on anywhere you get podcasts.
Well, thanks for that, Kevin. Appreciate it. And on behalf of Kevin, I'm Bradley. Good luck in the best ball streets.